Hey, everyone. Welcome to Brand Growth Live. I'm Brandon Birkmeyer, your personal marketing coach. And each week, this is a new show. Each week, I bring on people like you, entrepreneurs out there in the world that are trying to solve the questions that hopefully can move their business forward. So, marketing questions, branding questions, honestly, anything that you want to bring to the table, we try to work through together in about a half hour. And if you guys want to be on this show, this is open to anyone that has a question out there. You can tune in Wednesdays at 1 p to brandonbrands.com/live. That'll take you to the Facebook page. And you can either watch other people's questions or you can submit your questions to brandonbrands.com/live guest and apply to be on the show. But we do this every week. This is for you. So I hope you guys appreciate it. And with that, we are going to jump into it and kick off with the theme music.
Brandon Brands.
All right. Again, everyone, thanks for tuning in. Got a great show for you this week. Excited to bring it to you today. And as always, if you want to know more information about me and you want to get to know, marketing, branding, and that whole thing, brandonbrands.com is where all my information lives. I do have a podcast that runs every week. It's called Brands on Brands on Brands. And each week we bring top marketing experts to really dive into your questions, the things that are topical and trending. But this show today is about you. So first off, if you are watching live, get involved. I want to see that you guys are here, that you're part of the community, that you're active. So if you do watch live today, and this will take a while to accumulate audience, but as you do watch live today, type in #live so that we know you're listening. And we appreciate that you guys are tuning in. If you're a hashtag replayer, you can do that too. Watch later on and type in #replay so that we know that you saw it. So appreciate the interactivity. And with no further ado, we'll bring to you our first guest today. Our first guest question, first off, was how do I position myself in a crowded market? So that's what we'll be talking about. But let me tell you guys a little bit more about our guest. And let me see if I can bring this on real quick. Here we go. So our first guest today, her name's Unique Hammond. She is a friend of mine from the Los Angeles area. Unique has written a book called Your Tastebuds Are A Holes. It chronicles her fight with Crohn's and how she's solved some of her, or is working through some of her, solutions to this through diet and nutrition, and some of those solutions that she'll talk about better than I can. She also has a website called yourgreat.com. That's YOURE great.com. You guys should check it out. She works with people one-on-one to help them with what's going on, but we'll bring her on with no further ado. So Unique, if you will, let's get you into the podcast here. Welcome. Thanks for being on today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So for our guest today, can you tell us a little bit more about your book and Your Great in general and just how you help people?
So I got sick a while ago, and it was my own struggles with gut issues that really forced me to look at the landscape, both nutritionally and medically. And I ended up really diving into the nutritional part. And I made a promise that if I ever got better, that I would give that back to other people, because 10 years ago when I got sick, there wasn't a lot of information about how I could take control of my health story. It was just really a medical conversation, especially for IBD, inflammatory bowel disease, very sexy. So I literally changed directions. While I was working, I started school to educate myself once I did go into remission so I could make good on my promise and give back. I went back to school. I got my nutrition degree. And while I was doing that, I also decided to write a book, because I was like, I need to write my story while it's still fresh. And the purpose of the book is to get it in the hands of sick people. So not only did I write the book, but I wrote it for sick people. It's a really easy, fun read about really horrible, horrible things. And that happened to us when we have an IBD. So, because at the time also all the books that I read were really medical. and I'm not a medical person. So anyway, so yes, I kind of did everything together all at the same time, which is insanity, but went to school, got my degree, wrote the book, and now I'm here and I'm ready to help people. And I'm trying to find that groove. Like, how do I find my people to give them what I'm here to give them, which is hopefully some guidance and lifestyle support.
So you're building this business that, gives back. I think it's one of those things that we all wish that we could be doing something that is living our purpose. This isn't your main job. You have a job outside of this, and you're trying to build this thing that really helps people, which I think is super honorable. But so how do you, when you're working with people, what is your kind of your method? Are you doing like digital classes? Are you working one-on-one? Like, what's your way that you're working with people?
Currently, it's all one-on-one. I am building what I hope to be classes for a broader audience to come, but anybody who's had health issues knows what a personal journey it is. So there isn't really a one size fits all. I think there's a one size that fits many, which is what I'm, through experience of coaching people, I'm beginning to understand that I can create something that will fit for a lot of people, but there are people that don't fit into anything. And I think those are the people that I really benefit the most.
Awesome. I appreciate you coming on today. I appreciate you sharing your story and asking you good questions. I think even as a business owner and as an entrepreneur, not all of us are confident enough to ask the questions that we want answered, but I think this is the kind of place where if you can get help, you move forward faster. And just being able to realize that we're not in this alone as entrepreneurs, I think is part of the message I'm trying to share with this show, is that we're all in this together. We can all help each other. So with no further ado, I do want to jump into some of your questions. I ask everyone to submit 3 questions. I pick the one that I think will resonate with people, but I try to answer all of them and start a conversation that we can, hopefully carry on. But the first question you brought up today, which I think a lot of people will resonate with them, and I broadened it out a little bit, but it was, how do you position yourself in a crowded market? So can you talk a little bit about that? Like, what are you trying to accomplish, and why is this something you're thinking about right now? Why is it something that you're dealing with in your business?
Well, when I was going through my health issue crisis, there wasn't a big conversation around alternative healing. And the market wasn't crowded, but I was in the pits of hell, so I didn't really think about it. I was just like, where are these people? I was Googling left, right, and center, where are these people? Now you Google, and it's like, everybody's a gut specialist, and everybody has a program. And so really, I know what I'm here to do. I'm more here to work with people, for the most part, with gut issues. I work with all kinds of people who want to lose weight and what have you as well. But really, where my passion and where my own experience lies is in the gut department of being an alternative to and complementary to the medical process. So how do I position myself in a relevant way out there in this market that is now just jam-packed, the health and wellness?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's a huge topic that a lot of businesses are facing today. I think figuring out how to separate yourself and stand out in the crowd is one of the first things most businesses have to figure out. And if you haven't, and you start moving forward with marketing and growing your business through ads, what you're going to find is that you start to sound like a lot of other companies, and there's not really a good way for a customer to know if you're for them or not. So this question I love, because positioning yourself, I think, is one of the first things that any business needs to figure out. And I think it's helpful for a lot of people. And you are, and I think, a good example of a market, which is health and wellness, which I know you're down a particular vertical, but if we broaden it out for the day, like health and wellness is crowded. I mean, everyone's got a solution to everything, whether it's fitness or actually health related. There's, you don't have to be a doctor anymore to give advice. And a lot of the times you're better off getting advice from someone that's not a doctor, because they're prescribed to kind of work a certain way, because they have to make sure that they're, kind of hedging against risk, if you will. And this is me, not a doctor, talking about this stuff. So again, nothing you hear today should be used as like advice from a medical professional. This is just us talking about marketing and branding a business. So I'll put that out there as a caveat, but
smart
positioning yourself in this crowded market, right? I do think, let's talk about niches, right? Let's dive down a little bit into this space a little bit. And to do that, I'm going to bring on the graphic, which I think helps to illustrate the point a little bit. Ownable niches. So this is the first thing I want to talk about. Now, with Ownable Niches, the first thing that I think you guys are going to want to think about is where do you continue to dive down deep? For Unique's example, uh, in the health and wellness space, she's what they'd call a gut specialist, right? Or in the gut health space, which you can call a lot of things. But that is, if you start going down it, that's within health. So it's not just health and wellness, it's actually down health. And then you go down health a little further and it's nutrition, and you go to, because that's how she helps solve some of the problems. And then you go down nutrition a little further and it's like, what are the problems that they're solving? And it's, irritable bowel disease, and, specifically gut health. And then if you go even further, her personal battles with Crohn's. So you even have a specific offshoot there that has to do with a particular medical history that a lot of people can relate to. And so I like to say is dive down as far as you can into an ownable niche. Now I use niche with caution because it's one of the words that I dislike the most, because it's the hardest thing I think for people to understand, especially if you're coming in as an entrepreneur and you're being told from a marketer, to go and just find a niche. I think that's confusing. And the reason is, I think people are like, well, is an industry a niche? Is a certain income level a niche? Is a demographic a niche? Like, where is the niche? So finding that is a harder topic. So what I like to say is start with the people that are ready to buy from you right now. And that might be like, so based on how you've built your service or your product, who do you think you can help the most right away? And who are the people that are in the market and looking for the thing that you sell right now, right away? That is your ownable niche to start with, or I should say your ownable audience to start with. And then you've got to figure out how to say, okay, within that particular audience, how am I saying that what I'm doing is different than what the other people are doing? So there might be a lot of gut health specialists in Unique's field that also want to talk about nutrition and how to solve their problems with that. So you might need to come in and find a way to solve that problem that you can own as your own, that you have to talk about in a way that makes it sound different, but makes sense to someone that's just starting to get to know the category. So that's where I would start. So Unique, I'm going to bring you back on here real quick. So starting with that in your business, this niche that you've been operating in, who are the people you've been working with? Are these people that knew that they had a gut problem? They've tried other things. Like, who are these people that you've been working with to start?
A lot of them, well, I would say it's kind of an interesting mix, because some of them have gut issues, but the doctors can't figure out what's wrong. So they'll come to me, just be like, I've done everything I can. I've done the colonoscopy. I've done an endoscopy. Nothing really is showing up, and I still have these gut issues. And they just want me to take, an acid suppressor for the reflux, but it's nothing. So some people are coming to me having really explored the other side and are frustrated. And then other people have a diagnosis. They've gone down that path. They've even done the medication, and nothing's helped. So I get people that are kind of don't fit anywhere, which I actually really enjoy, because when we start to make progress, there's real joy around it, where it's like, oh, this is working. Because for me, I never know. It's like, let's begin this process. And the reason why I don't have a product is because I'm working with people that I am really crafting a roadmap for them, with them. And we are working on it together. So we make it as we go. And it's really great.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so I think these people that already are in that space, that are ready to work with someone, they're going to understand what you do the best. And in a crowded market, I'd say you start with building reputation 1-to-1, like really one person at a time, so that you have people to preach the gospel of how great Unique is and how great your great is as a company. Look at that. See that wordplay, guys?
I like it.
But no, you do have to lean into like what's working with those people. But then what becomes a little bit, I think, more interesting is when you move to the next step, you have to try to figure out, okay, now what's the next kind of ownable space above that? So after you've positioned yourself uniquely in a different way for those people, how do you start to then figure out what's the way in that people tend to find gut health, right? So if like what's generally the entry point, the doorway into someone saying, you know what, I need to start researching gut health because that's where I am. But where did they start before that? What was the previous step? Is that something you've thought about?
That's not something I thought about. I do think about my own journey, because it took me a long time to get diagnosed as well. And it's not an uncommon thing for people with an IBD for it to take a long time to get diagnosed. And so in that interim phase, you're really Googling everything, gut issues, and why do I have this, and why do I have that? So there's definitely Google, showing up in Google, figuring out how I can show up in Google searches for everything across the board, gut issues, would definitely be my first stop, because that's what everybody does. Why do I have these things? Why is this happening? So that's where I started. And then where you end up is doctors saying, hey, you should join the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation, and you should join this group, and you should join that group. And these are all the support groups. So then the next thing, once you have a diagnosis, is joining the support groups.
Got it.
And that's kind of the progression.
Yeah, because I guess the point I'm thinking is that once you start to go down the road, like the further you are away from your niche or your specialty, the more educating you have to do, because there's going to be a lot of people in your market that don't even know that their problem is a gut issue, is something that they need to solve through diet and through nutrition, right? So before you get there, you might need to do some educating with them to say, okay, if generally you're one of these people that's going to the doctor, once a month for IBD, or you are someone who's I think on our kind of pre-call, you talked about who's chugging like antacids all the time. Like, you might start to be looking for a nutrition problem, nutrition solutions to, or, maybe not even looking for it, but you have other issues.
Right. Well, so a huge part of the population falls into the undiagnosed gut issues, where they're just like, oh, I had a bad meal. This thing doesn't sit well with me. They don't really know why they're having these stomach issues, and they just kind of play it off because nothing shows up in the blood. I was in that category of person who, had I done something about it in that phase, I might have been able to sidestep totally pulling the trigger on the gene of autoimmune, which is obviously was in my family somewhere, because that's the trigger that got pulled. And really, the people I would like to get to are the people who aren't giving their gut issues, their digestive issues, enough concern. Because if you begin to shift your diet and lifestyle in such a way that is gut supportive, you might be able to sidestep what could be a massive issue later. And I didn't know that at the time.
Got it. So what's interesting to me is that once you dive into this like ownable niches we're talking about, you can then start to broaden, because I think once you've established yourself as an expert in something, and you've leaned in enough, and you've done the work, and you have the case studies, and you have the reputation, you can start to broaden out and say, yeah, she's the person that knows this, but also that those solutions are helpful for these other things. And you can start to pull out a little bit and start to say, okay, she's the person that talks about nutrition, and that can help a lot of things. Or she's the person that talks about mental health and whatever. Like, you can start to broaden out. But I do want to, like, I hope the core takeaway is you do have to start with the focus of, for the people that I'm helping right now that know that they have a problem, that are looking for solutions for this exact thing, that are Googling gut health, that are Googling some of the medical conditions that are gut health driven. For those people, how do you show up first, and how do you show up with a message that really stands out to them as different, or as like either if you can't lead the category, if like you have the same message as the other 10 people doing the same thing, and you can't be number one on that list, you've got to find a new list that you start yourself. So that's what I want to kind of leave as something for you to think about.
What's interesting from what you just said is that if you Google people that are specializing in gut, is that they have a slew of things that they're working with, like gas and bloating and cramps and all of these things, and that their thing can cure it all. And where I differ is there is not a cure-all, right? Like, you can't, like, as soon as I see that, I go, yeah, no, no, I know, because I've been there. Like, that can't be that one thing is going to cure all. It's usually, so what I'm saying is, from what you're saying, I can actually dive even a little deeper as how I set myself apart from all the noise, is by going, I wish I could offer you a silver bullet, but anybody who kind of isn't being entirely honest, because usually it's a an unpacking of issues that you do to get to that better health. So
right. And sometimes that positioning ends up being about the framework that you build that's different, how you approach the process that's different, or something like that. But basically, if you can get to the top of the list, then I think you've found yourself in the right place. The second thing I want to mention while we're going through it is, there is, as you're finding that place, you do have to start to figure out how are you going to be the authority within that space, and doing the work and showing, and building the content out is step one. But step two has to do with authority by association. Now, what I want to put out there for those of you guys, so I can explain what I mean by authority by association, is, first off, you aren't going to start with all the credibility you need, and you're not going to gain all the eyeballs you need right off the bat just by having a solution to a problem, even if that solution works. So some of the things that are helpful is to figure out who are the leaders in this space, and how do you find people and stages that can offer you credibility. And by stages, stages, platforms, I'll explain that. But people first, right? So who are the people that are already in either that space or an adjacent space that can lend you credibility? So this is like when a new drug comes out and some doctor endorses it, right? And says, this doctor approves this message, or whatever the thing is one example of that kind of thing. Or a celebrity comes out and says, I eat Wheaties, like whatever that thing is, you have that endorsement that gives you the credibility to say, oh, this must be a good thing. I trust that person, or I'll buy anything that person sells, whatever that is. That now your niche may not have, a celebrity that's has that status, but I bet you there are people within your field that definitely are already established in terms of their name, in terms of their authority, in terms of someone that if you even have a conversation with, they don't have to say, I endorse Unique in her ways, but even if you can show that you are in the same room, you have an interview with them, you have a conversation with them, you're at the events that they're at, whatever it is, starting to build that association that you are running with these people puts you on that platform that you need to show your authority to the audience. So a good friend of mine, Travis Chappell, has an awesome podcast, says, what's the difference between someone who you're talking to? Say you're talking to someone at a conference and you're in the hallways and you don't pay them much mind. You have a very quick conversation. And then 10 minutes later, that person gets on stage. You didn't know they were a speaker, and they get on stage and suddenly you're enthralled in what they're saying. And afterwards is a line to talk to them. And what's the difference between when you met them and after? The only difference is that stage that they're on, and now they have that authority, and they are someone people look to, right? So that's what your goal is to somehow gain that authority. And it doesn't have to be by getting on a stage, though I recommend you try to do that, or start hosting meetups or showing up at places where you can speak your gospel, but also running with those people, being associated with those people. And podcasting is why I think one of the reasons it's so popular now is people interview others to gain that reputation by association. So if I can leave that with you guys, I think that's one more little piece of advice that I'll give back to you today. How does that land with you? Is that something that you think would work in your space?
Yeah, no, everything you were saying, I was like, yes. And based on our conversations prior to this moment, I've started to reach out to other people in the space who are running podcasts as a way to begin that conversation and start aligning myself with other people who are experts in the space, because what I'm doing is definitely different from what everybody else is doing. I'm not providing a one size fits all. So I'm not in competition with them. I'm kind of this different category within the category. So
yeah, so I think that's part of the work, and it's not exactly marketing per se, but it is relationship building. And I think that's a huge part of the process when you are building a brand and positioning yourself in a market, is figuring out how do you build your reputation through networking and the right relationships that put you in the right spaces for your field, especially when you're trying to be someone who helps others, through your teaching. So that's part number two. And then the third thing I'll leave you guys with for this question is other people's platforms. So I said I would get into this a little bit. So what I mean by other people's platforms is the stages that we're talking about, the shows, the content, the websites, anything someone else has built that has an audience. It could be a Facebook group. It could be just a blog that everyone reads. Somehow you have to find other people's platforms and show up there. And if you can't, show up with content and being interviewed and being someone that's speaking, the first place to start is by interacting with those communities and being a member of that community that is one of the more engaged and active people in the community, because then you're starting to build relationships with the people that have the problems that you're looking to solve, and you can start to just build organic relationships. And even then, if you start to build your reputation in those groups, whether you know that person that runs the group or not, that's a place to start. But even better, if you can think about the relationships you're developing, like we talked about in the last kind of idea, and really invest in those and figure out how you can offer help and be not in competition with, but in support of the other people in your industry, and build relationships out in that way. There's room enough of, out there, enough customers out there to go around. But if you're all working towards the benefit of each other and helping the community, I think you'll find that you develop these really big relationships that when they're looking for other people to bring on and bring new ideas, or maybe they have a meetup, or they have something they're writing and they want to quote, they'll think of you. So I think you have to start to build those relationships in some way, shape, or form, and really tap into the communities that are already out there. So that's my third piece of advice for this question today. Is that something you think you could do? Oh, wait, hold on. I got you on mute.
Oh,
there we
yes,
go.
Definitely 100%. And I have started, again, because you and I you've been coaching me. I've started to send my books to these people that I want to get in front of as a way ahead of time to say, hey, here's who I am, and I would love to contribute to your, to what you're doing, because I feel like we're aligned on that. So I've begun that outreach to help align myself with other people's platforms.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and I hope you guys forgive the pun on that, but you got to be yourself. So we're going to go kind of to the speed round, which is our last two questions of the day. And if you guys are listening, I appreciate the few of you that have jumped on. Awesome to see you guys here. Go ahead and drop a heart, a thumb, thumbs up, whatever it is, to let me know if you're appreciating what you're hearing today. Always appreciate your guys' engagement on the show. So question 2 was, basically, how do I use my book to elevate my brand? So tell us a little bit about the book, and then I'll see if I can kind of give you some tips there.
So my book is about my story, the trial and error that I went through and the hell that I went through to put my Crohn's into remission naturally. That was my goal, come hell or high water. And it was hell most of the time. So I wrote that book. Really, I wrote the book because I was on the other side. And as soon as I got to the other side, it was like, I have to fulfill this promise that I made at 3 a.m. I didn't sleep for 5 years, so I was awake a lot. And I just remember going, if I get through this the way I want to get through this, I'm going to help others. And I didn't know what that meant at the time. I wasn't in the health and wellness field, and I didn't even know if it was going to work. So once I did get on the other side, I wrote this book. The intention of writing this book was just give it to everybody and anybody who has stomach issues. It doesn't have to be Crohn's, because Crohn's is kind of the tip. It's not the tip of the iceberg. The transient stomach issues, that's the tip. And underneath that is the possibility of something bigger. So it was just really anybody, like, hey, shift your diet and lifestyle now before something worse comes along. Like, don't wait for the crash. Be proactive about your health. And I've had a lot of people pick up my book who don't have an autoimmune disorder, who thanked me for it, because it's really a philosophy on living your best healthy life and putting away your Superman cape, that you're invincible and that nothing is going to take you down, because that's not the story that you see when you look at stats of disease out in the world. It's the stats are stacked against us. And so anyway, I wrote this book really as a giveaway. Like, I'm doing this to give it away. But now that I am shifted entirely, and this is where my heart is, I'm like, okay, now this thing that I created to give away, how do I create greater awareness of what I'm here to do by using it?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. There's a lot of people out there who are thinking, should I write a book, or they have a book and how do I sell it? And I think that the key is the idea of your book elevates your brand and not the other way around, especially when you're starting out. Like when you are diving into a niche and you are new to the game and people haven't fully discovered you yet, the idea that you're going to sell a ton of books or even give away a ton of books isn't going to happen, right? But the book, the best piece about it is its credibility, right? It's the thing that people can look to and say, oh no, she's not just talk. She's done the work. She's put a framework together and put her story out on paper. And it is, I'd say, the leverage point to A, your credibility, like your reputation, but also B, it's the key to getting you into places that you couldn't get into otherwise. So when I say get on a stage, give a talk, or get on a podcast or get an interview, the way into that is to say, I wrote the book on this. And here, so what I would do next is to write a profile, your picture, your little the blurb of what your message is, and what you think the couple of things that people can ask you that you can answer in your sleep that really adds value to people right away. If you can compose that, that's the thing I would send to a million people and say, I want to get on your show. I want to get on in your group. I want to talk to your people, whatever the thing is to leverage your platforms. The book is the key because it is the proof that you are more than just someone who's thinking about it, or someone that has some ideas. So I would use it as credibility and leverage to support your accolade, because eventually you want to accumulate accolades, right? You want to be not only the person that wrote a book, but also the person that's had their article featured in other people's publications, that's been featured on other people's podcasts, so that you can add that to your story. It's like unique, as seen in, on Forbes, in Medicine Net or whatever the thing is, that was interviewed by Dr. Phil. Like, I don't know, but the people in your space that's like, this is the path. So starting with the lower hanging fruit of the people you can get into right now and talking to right now, this is the way in. And the more platforms you can build like a book, the better. But I think it's the first step. It's the first stamp, because it's not a small endeavor to write a book. And no one has. If nothing else, that's something that separates you from the other people out there talking. Is that you're not a doctor, but you've lived the experience, and B, you've found a way to catalog what's working for you and tell a story, and that's what people connect with. So that's how I think you use your book to elevate your brand. And then we're going to dive into the third one here, which is, how do I use social media, right? Facebook, Instagram, or Google to promote my business, promote my book, right? So this question is, I think, something that a lot of people ask, but let me go back to you for a second here. Is this something you've kind of dipped your toe in, or you're thinking about doing? Are you already doing it? Like, where are you at in the process?
Mostly on Instagram. I've posts that I'm talking about my service and what I provide, I've promoted. And the engagement has always shot way up. And sometimes I'll get somebody who signs on, and sometimes it reaches the right market, but I don't feel like, and I don't know if it's in the way that I'm maybe hashtagging it, but I still don't feel like they're finding the people that I'm looking for. So I feel like maybe it's in the user error situation where I don't know exactly how to write the ad that is going to find its way into the hands of people who are looking for that alternative.
Right. Yeah. So I think the answer I want to start with is, it's definitely something you should use, but it's not something I would spend a ton of time on right now. I think your focus when you're beginning, for anyone out there beginning, any entrepreneur out there beginning, is to think about, how can I work one-to-one? How can I get as many people to know me one-on-one as possible? You meet someone, who do you know? What's my referral? You go into a group, you see someone talk about something, you reach out and you have a conversation with them in the direct messages of Facebook or in the direct messages of Instagram, literally reaching out one person at a time. Because for every 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 people you meet, there might be someone that really connects with you and starts to share your story. And I think too many of us worry about mass communication really early. And the place we need to start is one-to-one. Or we usually end up on the bookends, right? We usually start with 1 to 0, which is like, we build our website and we build a cool Instagram profile, and no one's going to our website. No one's looking at our Instagram. So we build these things that are 1 to 0, I say, because it's 1 to like, you built it, but no one came. And Or you go into many and you start advertising something to a bunch of people that have no idea who you are. They have no reason to trust you, and maybe no interest in what you're saying because there's no relationship. So I'd say that those are the errors that people make. So when I say, you're thinking about social media and marketing and media, start with the one-to-one, which is how do you communicate with people on these platforms where they are spending their time and their attention? How do you actually engage with them one-to-one in their communities? And again, build those relationships that will then send you further. And then as that starts to happen and you have more of that momentum, and you have an offering, a product that you think will appeal to the masses, then I think you can start using some paid ads that really talk about a transformation or an offering that you can deliver on every time, that you have proof of, that you can write a killer sales page for, that's like, people have done this, do this, be that person that goes from this to this with my process, with my thing. Sign up for more information. And then you take them to like a webinar where you talk about how you've helped people or whatever. And then you see if they want to get coaching. What I do is you could even go even further and say, maybe you're not ready to sell. Maybe the attention you want to do is bring, advertise something that brings people to you in a way that brings them to a platform that you've built. So Brand Growth Live that we're doing right now, part of this is me introducing myself to people. So when I advertise, I'm not selling anything. I'm saying, come to the show. Come watch what we do here. Get to know me. So maybe some of your advertising is really about getting to know you, whether it be through a book or a talk or a video or whatever it is, so that you bring people into your world. And that can be smaller buckets of money, like $30, $40, $50 at a time for a post or for or whatever it is. But I even think that's premature. I think you don't get there until you really have something that you've built the groundwork behind, and that you know how to talk about top to bottom. And if you are there, if that's where you actually are, then I think you work on building a killer sales page and figuring out how do you explain that to the people, and test it first within the communities. Say, hey, such and such community, hey, 100 people that I've been talking to, I'm doing this thing. Is it like, I'd love you to take a look at it and let me know what you think of this program that I've outlined. Is it something you think is valuable? Maybe one or two of you can test the program or whatever. I know you're already working with people, but still, I think there's something about introducing the idea to people first, and then saying, well, cool, if you think this would work for you, maybe you'd want to be one of my beta classes, the first 10 people I work with at a discount. And what I'm asking for you in return is that you really commit to the program, that you talk about it, and I can use some of your footage for social media and for testimonials or whatever. So that's how I would start. And then from there, getting into the coaching on paying for ads and all that stuff is a whole different topic. But I think this is what hopefully is really useful for the people out there listening today.
100% what you're saying. It's really funny because I was thinking in my head, I was like, but they said build it and they will come. They don't tell you like build it, and then you have to start creating all of it and doing the work and really getting into it. And the mantra that I've made for myself, because as you can see, I went to school, I wrote a book, I did everything all at the same time. I'm not a person that sits still. I like to be moving. So my mantra to myself is be right here. Stay right here. Stop trying to run over there and run over there. Just like do it. Just be here and do it. Do the work. And I think that's the hardest part in a world that seems to be blowing up around you with successes and all of this stuff, to practice, to do it, to continue to do it, to hone your skill, to sharpen your knife. That is where the work goes. So yes, you can build it, but it's doing the everyday work that makes the difference.
Yeah, I think that's the takeaway. If you can both do the work, build the one-to-one relationships, and then connect with people one-to-one and start to get interviewed and gain that associational credit, people will start to come to you. And yeah. I think you've done the work already. You have a good platform. It's just a matter of starting to build the credibility and the relationships and the associations you need to start to be known. But think about, how do I become the person known by 30 people first? Because those 30 people can tell 3 people about it, and it can become 90, really quickly. So I think you focus on your first 30, your first 60, your first 90, and then it starts to build beyond that. Thank you for coming on today. I'm going to wrap us up, but just first appreciate you, and I appreciate our time together.
Yeah, and thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
All right.
Your guidance has been priceless.
All right. Let's. We're going to jump out of this real quick. And for the rest of you, for those of you that are interested in being a guest on the show, you can always go to brandonbrands.com/live guest. I'm happy to hear your questions. Happy to have you on. Send them through. And we'll see if we can get you on the show every week, Wednesday, 1 p.m. And thanks for your time today, guys. Brand Growth Live. We'll be doing this every week. Thank you, and I will catch you next time.